We need to incent local government to increase housing starts, but we need to use a carrot and a stick. What if America had a law, Congress passed a statute that said, look, we don't care how you do it, states, but you need to increase your housing starts by 3, 4, 5% a year. Do it however you want to do it. If you do that, we will give you extra federal money. If you don't do that, we will take federal money away from you until you start doing it. Would that work?
If you're willing to champion such legislation, Senator, I'm willing to be behind you. I think there are challenges with that in the U.S. The difficulties of taking away spending that was already expected may be particularly hard. It may be easier to do with discretionary grants than with spending that's targeted. I also think it needs to be targeted not to the state's level of production, but to production in the most productive parts of the state.
Hey Patriots, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're breaking down a no-nonsense moment from a Senate hearing that went viral for all the right reasons. Senator John Kennedy called out the real reason behind America's housing crisis, and let's just say the Harvard professor in the hot seat didn't exactly have a solid comeback. This hearing took place in the Senate Banking Committee, where longtime Harvard economist Edward Glaeser testified on housing affordability, and what he said might surprise you. If you're tired of the same political spin and want straight analysis from the halls of power, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get into it.
Thank you all for being here. Professor Glaeser, you're head of the Department of Economics at Harvard? No longer. But you've taught there since 1992.
Correct.
I think you need to turn your microphone on.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
You did your PhD work at Chicago?
That's correct, sir.
Great school. You publish about 5 articles a year?
I don't know. I've published a few.
I appreciate your testimony because you not only talked about the problem, but you talked about possible solutions. No disrespect to anybody, but revamping our appraisal process or title insurance or talking about power imbalances is not going to get homes built, not in a free enterprise. Our problem is supply, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And the main reason we have a problem with supply is because of land use regulation, isn't it?
I've been saying that for 25 years, Senator. Yes, I agree with that very strongly.
And land use, zoning, some would call it, is within the job description of, to some extent, state, but mostly local government. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
And Congress has a history, it seems to me. You can disagree, certainly, if you do, of just throwing money at the problem and trying to tell local government how to get more houses built. And local government takes the money and pushes back because politicians at the local level, they like to eat and live indoors too, and they like to get reelected, and they don't want to make anybody upset by changing land use regulation in a way to encourage more housing. Would that be a fair assessment? My words, though, not yours.
I will not disagree with any of those words, Senator.
Okay. There's a plan that's been talked about in Canada. And what the Canadians have, they're talking about it. It hasn't been implemented, but the proponent of the plan, I've talked with Senator Warren about this, has said, look, we need to incent local government to increase housing starts, but we need to use a carrot and a stick. What if America had a law, Congress passed a statute that said, look, we don't care how you do it, states, but you need to increase your housing starts by 3, 4, 5% a year. Do it however you want to do it. If you do that, we will give you extra federal money. If you don't do that, we will take federal money away from you until you start doing it. Would that work?
If you're willing to champion such legislation, Senator, I'm willing to be behind you. I think there are challenges with that in the U.S. The difficulties of taking away spending that was already expected may be particularly hard. It may be easier to do with discretionary grants than with spending that's targeted. I also think it needs to be targeted not to the state's level of production, but to production in the most productive parts of the state, right? We don't want California to meet its requirements by building in areas that are very far away from Los Angeles or San Francisco, and and so forth. But I think basically something that creates carrots and ideally sticks as well, that tries to encourage states to do the right thing. And from my perspective, the battleground of affordable housing is in places like the California state legislature. And I would love those legislators who want to do the right thing, who want to make California a state for outsiders, to be able to say, look, the federal government is pushing us in this direction too. Can we just not lose our spending for X? Can we do this? And I think that would be very powerful in the hands of state
Who would be best to decide the most productive areas to incent housing?
I would use Bureau of Economic Analysis numbers of output per capita. I don't think it's, but this can be debated. We can, lots of people. I would not hand it over to an agency, though. I would put it directly in the legislation.
Do you think our problem in America with housing is caused by a power imbalance?
I'm not sure I know what that means.
Me
Senator.
neither. Me neither. Thank you.
Senator.
That exchange wasn't just funny, it was real. Because for years, politicians and think tanks have overcomplicated the housing crisis with vague theories and no real solutions. But in this hearing, we finally heard some truth. This was from the Senate Banking Committee, where Professor Edward Glaeser, a Harvard economist who's been studying housing markets for decades, laid out the facts. And the core issue? It's not Wall Street. It's not developers. It's not some deep philosophical imbalance. It's supply. We're just not building enough homes, and the biggest reason is land use regulation, zoning laws, local red tape. Cities and towns all over the country are putting up barriers that stop new housing from getting built, and they've been doing it for years. Glaeser has been sounding the alarm since the early 2000s, but Congress hasn't really listened. Until now. Kennedy, to his credit, didn't sugarcoat it. He said the quiet part out loud. Local politicians don't want to make zoning changes because it upsets voters, and upsetting voters means losing elections. As he put it, they like to eat and live indoors too. And he's right. Local leaders often know what needs to happen, but don't want to pay the political price to make it happen. So Kennedy brought up a bold idea. What if the federal government passed a law that said, states, you figure out how to build more homes. But if you increase your housing starts by 3, 4, even 5% a year, we'll give you more federal funding. If you don't, we'll take money away. A carrot and a stick. Simple, direct, no micromanaging, just measurable results. Now, Glaeser didn't reject the idea. In fact, he supported it, with a few caveats. He said taking away funding could be politically tricky, especially if states are expecting that money. So maybe start by tying this to discretionary grants, where Congress has more flexibility. And he made another key point. It's not just about building anywhere, we need growth in the high-demand areas. It doesn't help if California meets its quota by building out in the desert. You've got to build near jobs, in productive places like Los Angeles or San Francisco, where demand is driving prices up. And when Kennedy asked who decides what areas count as productive, Glaeser had a practical answer. Use data. Output per capita from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. That's not ideology, that's just math. And instead of leaving it to a federal agency, put it in the law. Be clear, be specific, and take the politics out of it. That's a smart approach, and one that could actually get traction. And again, when Kennedy pressed him on whether this is all about some abstract concept of power imbalance, Glaeser said what a lot of people are thinking. I don't even know what that means. That moment cut through all the noise. It was two people from very different worlds agreeing on something real. The housing crisis doesn't need more theory. It needs action. Less zoning, more building, real incentives, and the political will to finally get it done. So what's your take? Should Congress start putting financial pressure on states to build more homes? Is it time for carrots, sticks, or both? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you appreciate real talk and policy breakdowns without the spin, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Patriotic Report. We bring you the hearings that matter and the context behind them. Catch you in the next one.